They were serving the roast when my daughter leaned across the table and said, calm as if she were offering more wine, "This house isn't yours anymore." No warning, no preface. Just a statement dropped like a stone in the middle of our Sunday meal. The fork stopped. The room stilled. I kept chewing. I had to finish that bite or I would have choked on it. My name is Geraldine Harper. I'm 81 years old, and I've lived in this house for 57 of them. I brought my babies home here, buried my husband from here, planted every flower out front with my own hands. But apparently, sometime in the last year, while I was helping pay for their mortgages and watching my knees swell with each change in the weather, my daughter decided she had the right to unmake everything. Maddie didn't even blink. She wiped the corners of her mouth with that embroidered napkin I bought back in '86 and kept speaking. "We've filed the transfer. The property is under the trust now, and I'm the trustee. It's done, Mom. Done." I looked down at my plate. Potatoes, peas, roast, overcooked, as usual, since Maddie insists on using that damned slow cooker. It didn't look like a meal that would change someone's life. But there I was, sitting at the head of the table in a house that was no longer mine, surrounded by children and grandchildren who wouldn't meet my eyes. I took a sip of water. My hands didn't tremble. I've known tremors. After Derek died, after the biopsy, after the fall on the front steps. But not now. "Did you say," I asked, my voice steady, "that you transferred ownership of this house without asking me?" Maddie sighed like I was a toddler being difficult at bedtime. "You signed the documents, remember? Last year. You said you trusted me to manage things. It's the same arrangement, just formalized." What she meant was, she'd used the power of attorney I gave her during my hospital stay to turn my home into her asset. What she meant was, she thought I wouldn't notice or wouldn't care. Or maybe she thought I wouldn't fight back. Beside her, her husband Clint cleared his throat. Always the coward. And opposite me, my other two, John and Elise, just kept looking down at their plates like children caught between parents in a fight. I looked at them each in turn. John, who'd borrowed money for his business and never paid it back. Elise, who calls once a month and never stays longer than 10 minutes when she visits. And Maddie, my eldest, the one I leaned on most, the one I thought would stand by me. "You've decided," I said, "that I'm too old to make my own decisions." Maddie gave me that patient smile that feels like a slap. "Mom, no one's saying that. We just want you safe. This house is too much for you. The maintenance, the stairs, it's not practical. And if something happens, I cut in, "I'd rather it happen in my own house than in some place where strangers call me ma'am and forget my name." Silence. Then Elise said softly, "Maddie just wants what's best." Best for who? They didn't answer. Of course they didn't. I stood. My knees protested. The bones shouted. But I stood. "I don't recall inviting you all here to tell me I'm being evicted." "Evicted? Mom, no one is evicting you," Maddie said quickly, suddenly realizing how it sounded. "You're not being thrown out." "You just want to manage my home," I said, "my bills, my future, without me." Maddie stood too. Taller than me now, straighter, louder, but not stronger. "We're doing this to protect you. You gave me power of attorney. I'm using it responsibly. The lawyer agreed this was the best path forward." I almost laughed. The lawyer. Her lawyer. John finally looked up. "Mom, just stay. Please, let's not do this now. Let's not do this now." I nodded. "You're right. Not now." I walked away from the table. No one followed. I heard the click of forks hesitantly picking up again, heard the murmur of conversation trying to glue itself back together. But something had cracked in me. Not because of the house. I knew how to fight for what's mine. But because none of them, not one, had said, "You're right, Mom. This is your home." Not one had asked if I was okay. Upstairs, I sat in the rocker Derek built for me on our 10th anniversary and stared out at the maple in the front yard. Autumn had started early this year. Leaves curling at the tips, gold and rust against a blue sky. I rocked forward once, then again. I wasn't angry, not yet. I was something colder, older. I didn't cry, not for this. Downstairs, laughter started again. Someone turned on the record player, Elise's idea of ambience. Music drifted up the stairs like a perfume I didn't wear anymore. "This house isn't yours anymore." I whispered the words once, let them land in the room like she had dropped them in mine. Then I got up and went to my bedroom, where the old safe was. I turned the combination by memory. Inside, the deed, the originals, the ones she hadn't touched. I picked up the phone and dialed. "Jacob?" I said when my lawyer answered. "It's Geraldine. I need to come in tomorrow, early, and bring everything." "Everything?" he asked. "Yes," I said, "and cancel the power of attorney, immediately." I woke up before the sun. Not from pain, not from the usual ache in my hip that visits me most mornings like an old neighbor with bad news. No. This time it was my mind that pulled me from sleep. Sharp and cold, like a wind through a cracked window. I lay in bed for a few minutes, staring at the ceiling fan, listening to the silence in the house that used to hum with children, dogs, creaking floorboards, radio music from the kitchen. Now it was just quiet, heavy, like a held breath. I rose slowly, careful with my joints, and padded to the bathroom in my slippers. The light above the mirror flickered before settling. I looked at myself. Pale skin, hair like steel wool pulled back in a clip. A face that still startled me sometimes. Because inside, I still felt like the woman who built a home, not the one being eased out of it. Downstairs, the table was still set. The plates hadn't been cleared. Someone, probably Clint, had offered to help with the dishes, and I must have waved them off. The roast sat stiff in the pan, its edges hardened, like it had given up trying to be warm. I didn't touch anything, just stood there for a while. Yesterday, they had declared the end of something sacred. Not with a fight, not with fists or shouting, but with paperwork and soft, reasonable voices. That's how they get you, I thought. They wrap the blade in silk. I made tea. Earl Grey. I don't know why. I wasn't in the mood for tea. But the hands needed something to do, and the water needed to boil, and the cup needed to be held. I took it to the porch and sat in Derek's old chair, the one he refused to sand even when the arms started splintering. Said it gave the wood character. Said it reminded him to be careful where he rested his elbows. Funny, the things you remember. Funnier still how little they seem to remember. Maddie used to sit right there on the porch steps, stringing clover flowers together and pretending to read her chapter books. She cried when we trimmed the hedge too short one summer. John broke his arm, falling out of that tree. Elise once painted the dog blue and swore it was an accident. This house had raised them, fed them, held them through every scraped knee, every slammed door. It had soaked up their secrets, their tantrums, their dreams. And now it wasn't mine. Or so they thought. I thought about the signature Maddie mentioned, the one I gave when I was in the hospital last year, after the blood clot scare. She'd come in with a folder, said it was just in case, said it was better to be prepared. Power of attorney, just temporary. It's what everyone does, Mom. I hadn't read all of it. I'd trusted her, my daughter. But last night, I saw it in her face. She didn't think she was stealing. She thought she was solving a problem, tidying up the loose ends of an old woman's life, like organizing pantry shelves. I sipped my tea, lukewarm. Back inside, I opened the file cabinet in the study. The bottom drawer held everything: the will, the deed, the insurance policies, the letters from the bank. I pulled them all out, laid them on the table, one by one. My handwriting on the margins. Derek's signature, still firm and proud, next to mine on the old deed. The name Geraldine Harper, written in black ink, unshaken. No, they weren't going to erase me. At exactly 9 a.m., I called Jacob. "Geraldine," he said, surprised, "I didn't expect to hear from you so soon." "Something's happened," I said, "and I need to take back what's mine." I told him everything, or almost everything. I left out the roast, the way Elise wouldn't meet my eyes, the smell of lavender hand soap on Maddie's fingers when she pushed the papers toward me. But I gave him the rest. He didn't sound shocked, just tired. Maybe he'd seen it before. "Can you come in this afternoon?" he asked. "I'll be there by noon." I hung up and started getting dressed. No special outfit, just slacks and a warm blouse. But I took my time. Ironed the collar, buttoned the cuffs. I wouldn't walk into that office like a confused old woman with a folder full of regrets. I would walk in like someone reclaiming her name. At 11:30, I drove myself into town. The car was old, but she still moved with dignity, like me. Downtown was already buzzing with school traffic, leaf blowers, the clatter of deliveries. I parked near the courthouse and walked the rest of the way. Slowly, but without a cane. Not yet. Jacob's office was on the second floor of a narrow brick building with a chime that rang when you opened the door. The receptionist smiled, too bright, too young. "Mrs. Harper," she said, "he's ready for you." Jacob stood when I entered. Still wore those vests like he was auditioning for a courtroom drama. Still smelled faintly of pipe tobacco, though I knew he'd quit. He didn't waste time. We went over every document I brought, compared them to what had been filed through the trust, looked at timelines, signatures. "You're not out of options," he said finally. "But you need to act now." "I'm ready." Revoking the power of attorney is the first step. We'll also need to reassert your full ownership in writing, notify the county clerk. It may take a few days. Do it all. He looked at me over the rim of his glasses. "This will change things with your daughter." "They've already changed." I signed where he told me. Initialed. Signed again. The pen didn't shake once. When I walked out into the sunlight, the wind was colder. The air smelled like the season turning. Something in me had turned with it. Not into anger. Not yet. But something sharper than silence. Something my daughter hadn't counted on. At 8:02 the next morning, a white sheriff's vehicle pulled into my driveway. From the kitchen window, I saw it crawl up slow, deliberate, like someone coming to deliver bad news in person. The same car that came for my neighbor when her husband passed in his sleep. The same county seal, the same stern letters. Sheriff. Haven Falls. For a moment, my stomach turned. Old instincts. Because when the law arrives uninvited, it's rarely good news. But then I remembered. I'd made the call. It was my request. Still, I wiped my hands on the towel, smoothed my blouse, and stepped out onto the porch with dignity. No fear, no shame. Deputy Crane got out of the car. Not the sheriff himself, but his right hand. tall, clean-shaven, polite enough to ask before stepping on a woman's roses. He took off his hat when he saw me, as if we were still in a time when men remembered their mothers taught them manners. "Mrs. Harper," he said. "Deputy," I nodded. "I received a call from your attorney yesterday. Said you'd requested presence for a property matter." "That's right," I said, stepping down one creaky step onto the gravel path. "Come on in." He followed me up the porch, then inside the house. He looked around, respectful but observant, taking in the pictures on the wall, the age of the furniture, the shine on the wood floor that I still polish myself. "Would you like some coffee?" I asked. "No, ma'am, I'm good. Just here to make sure everything proceeds peacefully." I sat at the head of the table, the same place where 2 nights ago my daughter announced the erasure of my life. Crane remained standing, hat in hand. "They might come today," I said. "Your family?" "My daughter, her husband, maybe the others. I thought I'd give them the courtesy of knowing they're no longer in control." He nodded slowly. "Your attorney said there was confusion about the ownership." "There's no confusion anymore," I said. "The deed's back in my name. Power of attorney's been revoked. The trust is voided. My lawyer filed the paperwork yesterday with the county clerk." "I saw the notice," he said. "Just wanted to make sure you weren't under any threat." I looked him in the eye. "I am under threat. From erasure. From people who think age makes a woman invisible. But I won't let that stand." Crane cleared his throat, uncomfortable now. They never know what to do when an old woman speaks plainly. "Have you had any direct confrontation with them since?" "No, but it's Friday. She usually comes by to check on things." I let the words hang. I figured she'd bring more papers, or a moving van. He nodded again. "Would you like me to stay for a while?" "Wouldn't hurt. I don't want any drama, just facts." He walked toward the front door but stayed inside, near the coat rack. I returned to the kitchen, poured myself the rest of yesterday's coffee, cold and bitter, like I preferred it this morning. At 8:47, a familiar red SUV turned into the drive. Maddie. I watched her step out like she owned the gravel under her boots. Same stiff gait, same beige cardigan she always wears when she wants to look neutral. She didn't see the patrol car at first. She was holding a file folder, thick and smug-looking. When she stepped onto the porch and finally noticed the uniformed man behind the screen, she faltered. "Mom?" she called, squinting through the front door. "Is everything all right?" I met her there. I didn't open the screen yet. Let her see me fully before I gave her the floor. "I'm fine," I said. "This is Deputy Crane. He's here because I asked him to be." Her brows drew tight. "Why?" "Because the last time we talked, you told me I didn't own my house." Maddie tried to smile, small, condescending. "That's not what I said." "It's exactly what you said. And you came here with documents, expecting to enforce something that is no longer legal." She opened the folder. "These are copies, Mom. I brought them so you could read." "I have read everything with Jacob. The documents you're holding were based on a revoked authority. They hold no weight now." Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. "I don't know what he told you, but I was only trying to secure the house in case—" "In case I became inconvenient?" I asked. She flushed. "Don't put words in my mouth. Don't put lies in mine." Crane stepped forward. "Ma'am, I'll have to ask you to leave the premises if you continue to press the issue. Mrs. Harper is the sole legal owner as of this morning's filing." Maddie turned to him, startled. "I'm her daughter. I was just here for a visit." Crane didn't blink. Then you can visit another time, not with that file in your hands." She looked at me again. This time, something deeper than offense flickered in her face. Not rage. Not yet. Just disbelief. The slow realization that the thing she'd planned quietly, confidently, had collapsed without her knowing. I opened the screen door. "I'll let you know if I need help around the house," I said. But not before. Maddie didn't move for a long moment. Then she turned, walked back to her car, and drove off without another word. Crane and I stood on the porch for a minute in silence. "She won't give up that easy," he said. "No," I agreed. "But neither will I." He tipped his hat again, nodded, and walked to his car. The porch felt warmer after he left. Sun on the railing. The air smelled like dry leaves and wood smoke. For the first time in days, I breathed in deep. The house was still mine. But more than that, the voice in me, the one I'd silenced for years out of love or guilt or fear, had finally spoken. And it wasn't done. It started a week earlier, with a phone call I wasn't meant to hear. I was upstairs folding laundry, sheets mostly, the ones with the little roses I bought when Derek was still alive, when Maddie came in through the back door. She didn't know I was home. Or maybe she thought I was out on one of my walks, as she calls them, like I'm just some neighborhood ghost that floats through the same 3 blocks with nothing left to do. She was on the phone with someone. I didn't recognize the voice. A man, confident, sharp, probably a lawyer. "She won't fight it," she was saying. "She signed the POA last year. It's all airtight. We'll move the deed through the trust. Quick and clean." There was a pause. Then, "She doesn't need to know the details. It's better if she thinks it's just a formality." I stood there, still holding a fitted sheet in my hands, my fingers frozen in the cotton. She was quiet again, listening, then laughed, softly, but not kindly. "It's not theft. It's stewardship. We're protecting her future, and the house won't go to probate this way. My siblings are useless. Someone has to take the reins." I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Just listened as my own daughter explained how she planned to outmaneuver me with paperwork I'd signed while recovering from morphine. Eventually, she hung up, made herself a cup of coffee in my kitchen like nothing had happened, and left. I didn't come downstairs until her car was gone. That night, I pulled out the copy of the power of attorney from the file drawer. I remembered the day I signed it after the blood clot, before the rehab center. Maddie had brought it in like a casserole, warm and meant to comfort. "Just in case," she'd said. "If anything happens, we don't want the county making decisions." And I'd believed her, trusted her, because she was my daughter, because I was tired. But now I could feel it. Something curling behind those gentle smiles, something dry and cold beneath all her help. The next morning, I called Jacob. "Are you free this week?" I asked. "I can make time," he said. "What's going on?" I told him only what he needed to know. "I think someone's using paperwork I signed in good faith to rearrange my affairs behind my back." He didn't ask which child. He didn't have to. His office smelled the same as it always had: old books, pine cleaner, and the faintest trail of pipe smoke he refused to admit he still used at home. I sat across from him and laid the papers on the table like cards in a bad hand. "Revocable?" he asked, tapping the trust documents. "Supposedly." He read in silence. Occasionally, his eyebrows twitched. He murmured once. Then again. He took off his glasses. "Geraldine, it's not illegal what she's trying to do. But it's calculated. She's used the POA to initiate a transfer of deed into a family trust, with herself as sole trustee." I suspected. You weren't notified because technically you gave her that authority, but it's not permanent. And as long as you're competent, and I have no doubt you are, you can revoke it and reverse any pending actions. And that's what we'll do, I said. Jacob looked at me for a long moment, something fatherly in his expression. I'll draw up the revocation, and we'll file the motion to rescind the deed transfer. But Geraldine, this may start something. It already started, I said. I just didn't see it until now. We spent an hour going through every document. The house, the accounts, even the small investment portfolio Derek left behind. Jacob suggested creating a living will, one with clear language that left no room for interpretation. I agreed. He also recommended a backup plan, just in case she tries to use the POA again before the revocation is processed. I'll call the bank myself. He smiled faintly. You're sharper than most clients half your age. I didn't smile back. I've just been underestimated longer. That afternoon, I drove straight to the bank, asked for Richard, my portfolio manager, told him I wanted to freeze all scheduled transactions until further notice. Suspicious activity, I said. Family dispute. He didn't pry. I also asked him to prepare paperwork for a new trust, this time in my name, with full control, and the option to name a beneficiary outside of my children. Elise's daughter, Haley, I said. She still comes by without asking for anything. She's the only one who asks how I am. We'll structure it accordingly, Richard said. I left the bank with a folder under my arm and something stronger in my chest. Not anger, not yet, but the thing that comes before the storm. Resolve. When I got home, the phone rang. Maddie. I let it go to voicemail. Her voice was bright. Hey, Mom. Just checking in. I thought we'd do a little family dinner next week. Sunday sound good? I'll bring dessert. Love you. I stared at the machine, the blinking red light. The voice I'd known since the day she was born, now playing back like a warning. I poured myself a glass of water, sat down at the table, and said out loud what I hadn't dared yet. She thinks I'll never fight back. But she was wrong. I wasn't preparing for war. I was simply reclaiming what never should have been taken. And I intended to do it quietly, precisely, and with the kind of grace no one expects from a woman in her 80s. Let them be surprised. Let them underestimate me one more time. It would be the last. The call to the bank wasn't hard. It should have been. For most of my life, I'd avoided conflict the way others avoided debt collectors or wasps on the porch. But that morning, the fear had dried up. What remained was something simpler. A clean, focused resolve. Richard answered on the third ring. He always did. Mrs. Harper, he said warmly, I was just about to reach out. We got the preliminary forms from your attorney this morning. Is everything all right? No, Richard, I said calmly. But it will be. He paused. Tell me what you need. I want to cancel all scheduled transfers, every auto payment, every recurring transaction, no matter who it's for or how long it's been in place. He didn't question me, just said, understood, and I could hear his fingers already tapping keys. You'll probably see a few charges pending, I added. Anything tied to the house or my daughter's address, anything labeled under the family trust, we pull it. Today. We can flag and hold anything that's not yet cleared, he confirmed. Do you anticipate any reaction? I almost smiled. Yes, and I'm counting on it. He gave a soft laugh, just a puff of breath. Anything else? Yes. I'd like to create a new trust. One in my name. Sole control. And I want to name a new beneficiary. Of course. Who should that be? My granddaughter, Haley. She's Elise's daughter, correct? That's right. Would you like her to have access immediately or upon your passing? Deferred access. Full upon my passing. But I want her name on it now. Let it be known. Richard clicked through another few screens. We'll need to formalize with signatures, but I can begin the draft today. Do you want to earmark the funds now? Yes, I said. The same funds that were originally assigned to the family trust. Move every penny. A pause again. That's over $400,000. I know exactly what it is. All right. You've got my full attention, Mrs. Harper, and, if I may say so, it's a smart move. It's a necessary one. I thanked him, ended the call, and set the phone down next to my cold tea. Outside, the wind had picked up. I could hear the mailbox rattling on its hinge. A storm was coming. They'd said so on the radio. But I hadn't believed it. Now I could smell it in the air. I reached for the folder Jacob gave me. Inside was the new revocation document for the power of attorney. My signature already on the bottom in black ink. No tremble, no hesitation. By the end of the day, Maddie would find out that the money was gone, the trust dismantled, and her legal footing stripped out from beneath her. She'd call. She'd arrive. She'd say I was confused, manipulated, fragile. She'd use every word in her playbook except the one that mattered. Wrong. I stood and moved to the front window. The house creaked a little in the wind. Same old bones. It had been mine for nearly 6 decades, and I'd be damned if I let someone take it by slipping papers under my nose when I wasn't looking. Haley had texted me the night before. Grandma, can I bring you cookies this week? Maybe Sunday? I miss you. I replied only, yes, and bring your appetite. I'll make the lemon bars. No one else in this family had asked me what I wanted in months, maybe years. I turned from the window, walked to the kitchen, and opened the recipe drawer. Lemon bars, yes, and roast, but done right this time. If this storm was coming, I'd greet it on my feet, with my hands in flour, and my name back where it belonged. The next morning, I sat at the dining table with a stack of old bank statements, a yellow notepad, and my reading glasses that never seemed strong enough for the fine print. The ledger I kept for house expenses was neat, but this time I wanted more than neat. I wanted clarity. I wanted truth. I started at the beginning, not of my life, but of theirs. First was Maddie, my oldest, the one who used to write me poems on construction paper, fold them into hearts, and leave them on my pillow. Somewhere between braces and law school, those poems turned into itemized requests. 2011, tuition deposit when her scholarship fell through. $4,000. 2013, wedding dress because she said she couldn't ask Clint's family for help. $2,800. 2015, IVF treatment. $16,000. A quiet favor I never told anyone about. 2018, down payment on the house she said they'd grow old in. $38,000. Then came John, my sweet boy, who never quite landed. 2009, business venture with a college friend. Failed in 6 months, $2,500. 2012, DUI legal fees. I didn't even hesitate. $3,200. 2014, just until I'm back on my feet. $500 here, $800 there. I stopped adding after $10,000. 2020, rent for 3 months when he was out of work. $3,600. And Elise, my youngest. Always so independent, or at least that's what I wanted to believe. 2010, new car after hers was totaled. $9,200. 2016, private kindergarten for Haley. Only for the first year, Mom. $7,800. 2019, roof repairs. We'll pay you back in full. They didn't. $5,400. Line after line, check after check, I wrote them down. Not because I wanted revenge, not even because I wanted the money back. but because I needed to see it. I needed to witness my own generosity, something they had come to treat like a silent subscription, a tap that never ran dry. I sipped coffee gone cold and looked at the total I'd scrawled at the bottom of the page. $123,540. And that wasn't even counting the groceries, the birthday parties I covered, the hospital bills I paid without ever putting my name on them, or the inheritance I never touched after Derek died because I thought they might need it more than I would. What a strange thing to see your love measured in numbers, in transfers and deposits, in checks that never came back. But even stranger was the silence. Not once had any of them sat down across from me and asked, "Do you have enough?" Not once had anyone said, "Let us cover this." Not once had I been offered help with the gutters, the groceries, or even the new mattress I desperately needed last spring when my back screamed through every night. I had been their safety net, their invisible support beam, and they had mistaken my quiet for approval. I opened the envelope from the bank that Richard had mailed overnight. Inside were the temporary credentials for the new trust account. Haley's name sat printed below mine in crisp, perfect ink. It felt like an anchor, something rooted, something that couldn't be easily lifted or undone. Haley, the one who still asked me how I slept, who noticed when I wore earrings, who didn't reach for her phone during dinner. She was 21 and had more decency than her mother did at 48. I folded the papers and placed them in my desk drawer. Then I went to the living room, looked at the family portraits on the wall, and slowly took them down, one by one. Not out of spite, but because it was time to see the house as mine again. The walls didn't need reminders of who hadn't called in weeks. They needed light. Maybe new paint. Maybe curtains that didn't sag at the corners. I boxed the photos gently, wrapped the glass in tissue, set them aside in the hall closet. Later, I'd sort them by what to keep, what to pass on, and what no longer needed to be in view. This wasn't a purge. It was a restoration. I pulled out a fresh page from the yellow pad, wrote at the top in block letters, "Things to do for me. New mattress. Call plumber about the upstairs sink. Lemon bars for Haley. Dinner with Lorraine next Thursday. Paint the front door red like it used to be." There was something comforting in the list. Not urgent, not desperate. Just mine. Outside, the mail truck slowed near my gate. I saw the carrier place something thick into the box. Another legal envelope, most likely. Perhaps Maddie had finally noticed the withdrawals. Perhaps John had received the overdraft alert. They'd come running soon. But I wouldn't be waiting at the door. He didn't call first. Just showed up in that dented black Honda of his, the one I helped him buy after his third temporary setback. I heard the tires crunching the gravel and knew it wasn't Maddie. She parks like a lawyer, precise to the inch. John always lands sideways. I stayed at the kitchen sink, rinsing mugs I'd already cleaned twice. Let him knock once, twice, before I answered. He didn't wait for me to invite him in. "Mom," he said, stepping past the threshold. "We need to talk." He looked older than I remembered. His face tired, jaw unshaven, a hollow around his eyes like he hadn't slept. I wondered briefly if he was hungover or just panicked. "I heard from Maddie," he said, pacing the entryway like he used to when he got caught lying as a teenager. "She says you've canceled the trust and moved the money." I didn't speak. Let the silence sit. Let it stretch. "She's freaking out," he added. "Said the house deed was revoked, that the sheriff was here." I dried my hands with a towel and turned to him. All true. His mouth opened like he expected me to explain. When I didn't, the irritation crept in. Why? He demanded. Why would you do that without telling us? I tilted my head. Did you tell me before you let Maddie take over my property? He flinched, just slightly. She was just trying to help. We all agreed it was time to make things easier. Easier for who? He threw his arms up. For everyone. For you. You're getting older. What if something happens? What if you fall down the stairs or forget the stove's on? I've been falling and getting up since before you were born, John. He groaned, turned away. This isn't about pride, Mom. This is about logic. Planning. No, John. It's about ownership. About control. About the fact that your sister used a legal document she tricked me into signing to remove me from my own house. He looked at me then, really looked, and I saw it. Not understanding, not remorse, just discomfort. A boy caught between loyalty and convenience. She said you've been acting erratic. I laughed, not loudly, just once, like a cough. Of course she did. She said you're cutting everyone off, that you're being manipulated, that maybe Haley or someone. I made every decision on my own, I interrupted. And for the first time in years, they were for me. John shifted his weight. But what about the rest of us? I mean, we've relied on that help. I've relied on you. And have you ever asked what I rely on? He blinked. I stepped closer, slowly, until we were almost face to face. Have you ever asked how I sleep at night? How much my medication costs? Whether the furnace still rattles in December? No. You just show up when you need something. That's not true. It is, I said gently, like correcting a child. And I let it happen, for years, because I loved you, because I thought if I gave enough, you'd give back. He looked down, at his shoes, the floor, anywhere but at me. You're my son, I said, and I'm still your mother. But I won't be your wallet, or your backup plan, or the old woman you forget until your account balance dips below zero. He swallowed. So what? This is it? You're cutting us off? No, I said. I'm restoring balance. You all are grown. Time to live like it. John was silent. His shoulders slumped, not from understanding, but from defeat. Does Haley know? He asked finally, bitterness leaking in. That she's the favorite now? She knows I trust her. That's all. He nodded slowly, jaw clenched. I should have seen this coming, he muttered. Maddie said you'd turn on us. No, I said. You turned from me. I just finally stopped pretending not to notice. He walked to the door, paused with his hand on the knob. If things get worse, he said, not looking back, don't expect anyone to come running. I let that sit a moment. Then, that's the first honest thing you've said all morning. He left. Didn't slam the door, but didn't close it gently either. I stood there, alone in the quiet house. The air thick, like after a storm that didn't bring rain. No tears came. I was past tears. What sat in me now was a calm refusal. No more silent giving. No more shrinking for the sake of peace. Let the house echo. Let the doors close behind them. I was still standing, and I would stay standing. She didn't even have the decency to come alone. At 10:15 that morning, I looked up from pruning the ivy along the front porch and saw her car pulling into the driveway again. But this time, there was a second vehicle behind it. Sleek, white, too clean for our road. A Lexus, likely a lease. Realtor's car, I thought, and I was right. Maddie stepped out first, hair pinned tight, her walk clipped and brisk. She wore that blazer she saves for deals, the kind meant to signal authority. She didn't glance at me, just walked around the car and opened the passenger door like she was unveiling a surprise. A tall man emerged, mid-40s, slim, with a tablet in one hand and sunglasses he didn't bother removing. He scanned the property like it belonged to him. That was my first clue. He didn't know yet. I didn't move, just stood there in my garden gloves, still holding the shears. "Mom?" Maddie said, finally acknowledging me with a tight smile. "We have a showing appointment, just an initial consultation." "A showing," I repeated. "Don't worry, nothing's being signed yet. We're just getting a feel for things, square footage, condition. It's standard." I said nothing. She gestured to the man beside her. "This is Brian Morgan from Longleaf Realty." Brian extended a hand, polite but already distracted, tapping something into his tablet. "Pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Harper. Beautiful place. Classic bones." I didn't take his hand. Instead, I looked at Maddie. "You didn't call first." "There wasn't time," she said quickly. "There's a seller's market right now. We can't miss the window." "And you thought the house was still yours to sell?" Brian glanced between us, the air shifting. "I still have the original trust paperwork," she added, stepping forward. "I'm not trying to start a fight, Mom. But if you make this harder than it needs to be, it could get ugly. For everyone." I turned and walked toward the porch. Calm, slow, letting the silence stretch. Then I opened the screen door and pointed to the envelope on the side table inside. "County clerk's copy," I said. "Filed 4 days ago. Deed re-registered in my name. Your trust is void, and your power of attorney," I added, "is no longer valid." Maddie froze. Brian frowned, lowering his tablet. "I'm sorry. What?" "I suggest you both take a look before you start taking measurements." She pushed past me, no permission, no pause, and snatched the envelope, tore it open. Her eyes moved fast over the legal language, then slowed. This isn't possible," she whispered. "It's done," I said. Brian stepped back a little, clearly uncomfortable. "I wasn't aware there was a legal dispute. I really think—" "There's no dispute," I said, still calm. "There's clarity." "I need to call Jacob," Maddie said, more to herself than to me. "Please do," I replied. "He'll be glad to explain the ethics of coercion and misuse of legal authority." She finally looked at me, really looked, and I saw the panic begin to creep into her expression, where confidence had lived all week. "You're making a mistake," she said. "No," I said. "I made one last year, when I trusted you with my name." Brian was already edging toward his car. "I think I'll give you ladies some privacy. Let me know if things get resolved." Maddie didn't stop him. She stood on the porch, papers shaking in her hands, lips parted like she couldn't decide between outrage and pleading. "You don't understand," she tried. "You don't know what you're doing." "I know exactly what I'm doing." "You can't manage this place forever." "Then I'll fail on my own terms." She stared at me, and for a long moment neither of us spoke. Then, quiet but sharp, she said, "This changes everything." "No," I replied, meeting her eyes. "It corrects everything." She walked down the steps in silence, got into her car, drove away without a word. I stood there a moment longer, then turned back to the ivy, picked up the shears, snipped where I'd left off. The vines didn't care about paperwork. They only grew where you let them. The letter arrived in a thick white envelope with gold trim along the edge. A vanity choice, the kind Maddie always favored. The return address wasn't hers, of course. It belonged to a firm downtown. I didn't recognize the name, but I recognized the tone before I even broke the seal. Legal language has a smell to it, even through paper. cold ink, cold intentions. I opened it at the kitchen table, where I'd once sorted Christmas cards and grocery coupons. The letter was 3 pages long, printed on heavy stock. I read it once slowly, then again, faster, just to catch the parts she wanted to sting. Dear Mrs. Harper, this letter serves as formal notice that our client, Ms. Madeline Harper Cole, intends to contest the recent changes you have made to the family trust and the property deed at 172 Oak Hollow Road. The rest followed the usual song. Concerns over your mental state, possible undue influence, reversal of asset transfer, court-appointed review, and finally, the veiled threat at the bottom. In the interest of preserving family unity, our client prefers to resolve this amicably. However, she reserves the right to pursue formal legal action should an agreement not be reached. Agreement. That word sat heavy. What they meant was surrender. I placed the letter on the table and stared at it for a long time. Not because I didn't know what to do, but because I wanted to feel fully what it was like to be treated this way, by my own blood. Maddie had sent a lawyer to try to shame me back into silence. She didn't have the courage to stand here herself, so she paid someone else to do it for her. I called Jacob before the kettle finished boiling. She's bluffing, he said after I read him the letter. I know. She's hoping the language will intimidate you. It won't. I can draft a response by end of day. Make it short, I said. Sharp, no rage, just spine. He laughed quietly. You've always had that. Not always, I said, but I've found it again. By afternoon, he'd sent me a copy of the reply. To counsel for Ms. Harper Cole, your client's concerns are noted, but without legal standing. The recent revocation of power of attorney and re-registration of property have been executed in full compliance with state law and under the advisement of independent counsel. Mrs. Harper remains fully competent, as supported by documented medical and legal affirmation. Further attempts to challenge her legal autonomy may be construed as harassment. This letter serves as formal notice that we are prepared to pursue all remedies necessary under law, should these communications continue in this fashion. I didn't need more. Let them feel the difference between a silence born of fear and one born of certainty. Later that evening, a text from Elise lit up my phone. Maddie says you're lawyering up. Can we please not do this in court? I didn't answer. Not because I didn't have words, but because I'd said enough already. Through paper, through choice, through every dollar redirected away from those who had mistaken love for leverage. I folded the letter from Maddie's lawyer in thirds, tucked it into a file marked Attempts, and slid it into the drawer beneath my will. Then I turned off my phone, lit a candle, and made soup. Lentils with rosemary and garlic, just the way Derek liked it. The house smelled like winter coming, and I sat at the table by the window while the steam rose into the dark. I didn't need to argue anymore. I had already won. She came just after lunch, unannounced, with a paper bag in her arms and a nervous smile she couldn't quite hold steady. Hi, Grandma. I opened the door before she knocked. I'd seen her coming from the window, the way she always walked a little too fast, like she hadn't figured out yet that some places will wait for you. Hi, baby, I said, and stepped aside to let her in. She hugged me. Not the polite kind. The kind that says, I've been thinking about you more than I've said. I brought cookies, she said, holding up the bag like a peace offering. Let me guess, I said. Store-bought, probably with too much sugar. She grinned. Exactly. We sat at the table. The same place where just days ago Maddie had tried to erase my life with paperwork and smiles. But the table didn't remember that. Today, it belonged to just us. 2 women, 2 generations, both a little too quiet for too long. She poured the tea while I opened the cookies. Too sweet, yes, but soft in the middle. Like her. "I heard," she said after a few minutes. "About the house, about Mom." I didn't say anything right away. She's not taking it well. She's not used to hearing no, I said. Haley looked down at her mug. "She says you're being unfair." "And what do you think?" She was quiet. Then, "I think she's scared. And when she's scared, she gets mean." I nodded. "That's not new. I don't think she means to hurt you. I think she's just—" She stopped. "She wants to be in charge, all the time, like it makes her feel safe." I stirred my tea, watching the tiny swirls of milk spread across the surface. I spent a lot of years trying to protect her from what scared her. I thought maybe if I was generous enough, she'd feel secure. But some people can't be calmed by love. Only control. Haley didn't argue. That's what I loved about her. She listened like a grown woman, not a child waiting to interrupt. "I'm sorry she did this," she said. "You didn't deserve that." "No," I said, "but I let it happen. That part's on me." She looked up, startled. "It's not your fault." "It's not guilt I'm naming, sweetheart. It's ownership. I gave them the space to take from me by never asking them to give. I trained them to see me as the steady one, the silent one. And then I acted surprised when they mistook my silence for weakness." Haley leaned her chin into her hand, studying me. "They think you've changed," she said, "but I don't think you have." "I haven't," I said. "I've just stopped apologizing for being firm." She smiled. "It suits you." We sat in the sunlight for a while, eating cookies that melted too fast. Then she reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small envelope. "What's this?" "Nothing big," she said. "Just something I made." Inside was a card, handmade, watercolor. On the front, a simple red door, open just a crack, with light spilling through. Inside, her handwriting, "You are not alone." I looked up. My throat was thick, but I didn't cry. "I know it's cheesy," she said quickly. "I just wanted you to know I'm on your side." "It's not cheesy," I said. "It's the best thing I've been given in years." She blushed. "I want you to know," I continued, "that this house, this fight, it's not just about bricks or money. It's about dignity. About what a woman keeps when the rest of the world starts treating her like she's already gone." Haley reached across the table and took my hand. "You're still here. Stronger than all of them." For the first time in a long time, I let someone see the softness under the spine. Just for a second. "You'll inherit it," I said quietly. "The house, the land, everything." Her eyes widened. "Grandma, I want it to go to someone who still sees me, not just what they can take." She didn't say thank you. She just nodded. That was better. When she left, she kissed my cheek and promised to come back next Sunday. "Bring something salty," I told her. "Enough of this sugar." The door closed behind her with a gentle thud. I stood there a long time, holding the card. I'd been holding up the roof for so long, I forgot what it felt like to be held. She reminded me. The envelope was plain, no return address, just my name in Elise's handwriting. A little more hurried than I remembered, like she wasn't sure if she should be writing at all. It came 3 days after Haley's visit. No text to say it was on the way. No warning. Just a quiet thing slipped between bills and a grocery circular. I sat at the table, opened it with the same butter knife I use for jam, and unfolded the single sheet inside. Ink slightly smudged in the corners. No heading, no date, just words. Mom, I don't know how to start this without making things worse, so I'll just start. I'm not writing to defend Maddie, or John, or even myself. I want to understand what happened. I've been thinking a lot about that dinner, about the way you looked at us, like you didn't recognize who we'd become. Maybe you were right not to. I didn't know about the papers Maddie filed until after. She told me it was a formality, said you'd agreed. I should have asked more questions. But the truth is, I didn't want to know. Not really. Because if I knew, then I'd have to admit that we've been using you. There's no easy way to say it. We took, and you gave. Always. Without asking. Without. And that kind of giving, it fools everyone. It makes us believe you're endless. I never meant to treat you like an obligation or a solution, but I think I did. I think we all did. I guess I just thought you'd always be the one who held everything together, that you'd never push back. So when you did, it scared us. I'm not angry at you. I'm ashamed of myself. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even expect an answer. I just wanted you to know I see it now. I see you. Love. Elise. I read it once, then again. Not because I didn't understand it the first time, but because there was something fragile in it. Something that deserved to be heard more than once. Not an apology exactly, but an unsealing. I folded the letter and set it on the table beside Haley's card. 2 pieces of paper. 2 women on either side of me. One young enough to still believe in beginnings. One old enough to finally admit to the middle. Elise had always been the quiet one. The one who drifted between other people's choices. She never argued, but she also never stayed long. 10-minute visits. Short calls. A voice that rarely asked, "And how are you, Mom?" But the letter? That was something else. A voice not calling to fix or to smooth or to claim. Just to say, I looked away. And I was wrong. I didn't cry. But my chest ached a little. That's how real things feel when you've grown used to distance. Not like pain, like recognition. I didn't write back. Not yet. Instead, I set the kettle on, took out the good tea, the one I save for guests who know how to sit in silence, and brought a chair out to the porch. The house was quiet, but not empty. And for once, the quiet felt earned. Maybe one day she'll come in person, maybe not. But that letter was a door creaking open, and I had time. For now, I let the wind move through the ivy, let the old boards creak under my chair, and held Elise's letter in my lap like a memory that had finally stopped hiding. The notary's office was tucked behind the pharmacy downtown in a small beige building with no sign except the name in faded gold lettering on the glass. Marlene E. Tate, Notary Public and Document Services. I'd been there before. Years ago, when Derek and I updated our will after John's second bankruptcy. Back then, it felt like insurance. Something you hope never gets used. This time, it felt different. Like locking a door you already knew someone had tried to force open. I parked across the street, in the same spot I always did. Fed the meter. Checked my purse twice, even though I already knew the papers were in there. Clipped neatly in a manila folder with my name written across the tab in my own hand. Inside, the office smelled like old carpet and lemon cleaner. Marlene hadn't changed much. Her hair was still pulled back tight in that braid, silver running through the black now. She looked up from her desk and smiled when she saw me. "Geraldine," she said. Still sharp as ever, I see. And on time, I said, lowering myself into the chair across from her. She adjusted her glasses. Jacob called ahead. Said this was urgent, but not rushed. That's a fair way to put it. I handed her the folder. Inside were the final versions of everything Jacob and I had worked through. The rescinded trust, the new deed title in my name only, the asset protection clause, and most importantly, the new will. Haley was listed clearly, with full inheritance of the house and land. The language was tight. No loopholes, no room for interpretation. Maddie, John, and Elise were listed too, but as acknowledgments. No disputes, no entitlements. Would you like me to read it aloud? She asked. No, I said. I've read it enough. Let's just make it official. She laid each document in front of me, one by one, her voice steady, her fingers precise. I signed, slowly but without hesitation. My hand didn't shake once. When it was done, she sealed the final page with her stamp and slid everything back into the folder. Well, she said, tapping the table once gently. That's yours now, ironclad. I exhaled through my nose. Not relief, something firmer. Like setting something heavy down, knowing it won't be moved again. Thank you, Marlene. You did the right thing, you know. I did the necessary thing. She gave a small nod. They won't like it. They already don't. Does that bother you? No, I said. It used to. Now it just reminds me I still have something worth protecting. I stood. She offered to walk me out, but I waved her off. Outside, the sun was higher than I expected. The wind warmer. October, but not quite cold yet. Transitional weather. The kind that fools people into forgetting that change is coming. I placed the folder on the passenger seat beside me, carefully, like it was something alive. On the way home, I stopped at the bakery, bought myself a small peach tart, just one. The kind I never let myself get because I was always buying in dozens, for birthdays, for visits, for Maddie's charity events, for John's, just something sweet, Mom. This one was for me. Back at the house, I changed into my softest sweater, made a fresh cup of tea, and sat on the back porch. The kind of day I used to reserve for when everything calms down. But now I knew, peace isn't what comes after the noise. Peace is what you claim, deliberately, when you've had enough of being quiet for other people's comfort. I placed the folder in the cedar box under the floorboard in the study, the one Derek built himself back when safes were for banks, not homes. It clicked shut with a low sound, deep and final. The house was still. The kind of stillness that comes not from absence, but from presence. My presence. No paperwork would change that now. I sat down at the kitchen table and looked at the chair across from me. No one in it. And for once, I didn't feel the need to fill it. They would keep trying, I suspected, in small ways. Phone calls dipped in sugar. Sudden visits. A "how are you" wrapped around a new request. But the difference now was mine. I could say no, without guilt, without fear. The documents were in place. The lines were drawn. The past acknowledged, the future protected. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like restoration. And that was enough. She came just before dusk, when the light thins and everything outside looks like it's remembering something. No warning this time. No lawyer. No folder of papers. Just Maddie, standing at the foot of my porch steps, in a coat too thin for the season, and eyes that flicked between the windows like she was looking for someone to blame. I watched from inside, didn't move to greet her. Eventually, she knocked. 3 short taps, not hesitant, not quite bold. I opened the door and leaned against the frame. Maddie. Mom. A pause. The air smelled like wood smoke and leaves, the kind of night that used to mean cider on the stove and laughter through the screen door. Tonight, there was only silence. Can we talk? She asked. I stepped aside, but didn't invite her in. Let her choose whether to cross the line herself. She did. Slow, careful, like the house might shift under her feet. We stood in the hallway. I didn't offer her tea. She looked around like a stranger. Her eyes paused on the bare walls where family pictures used to hang. You took them down. I rearranged, I said. For who? For myself. She bit the inside of her cheek, a nervous habit she's had since she was a girl. For a moment, I saw her at 12 again, the day she broke the neighbor's window and came home with a lie in her throat. I read your lawyer's response, she said. You didn't have to make it so final. I did. I was trying to do the right thing, Mom. No, I said calmly. You were trying to do the convenient thing, for you. She stiffened. You make it sound like I'm some kind of thief. I make it sound like you used legal means to take what wasn't yours to control. Because that's what you did. She looked down at her hands. No rings today. No watch. Nothing to fidget with but the edge of her sleeve. You didn't even talk to me first, she said. I talked to you plenty. You didn't listen. She inhaled sharply. I was protecting the family, the house, our legacy. Then why did I have to bring in the sheriff to protect myself? That landed. She didn't flinch, but her eyes closed for a second longer than a blink. I didn't think you'd fight back. I know. I thought you'd let me handle things, like you always did. I did handle things. You just didn't like how. She looked at me again, and this time I saw it. Not rage, not panic, not even shame, just confusion. The dull ache of a woman who's realized her grip no longer holds. You didn't used to be like this, she said. No, I said. I used to make it easy for you to ignore me. She sat down on the bench by the front window, not because I told her to, because her legs looked unsteady. I don't know how to be your daughter anymore. You could start by not trying to be my manager. She gave a dry laugh. I never thought I'd be the villain in your story. You're not a villain, I said. You're just someone who thought I'd stay small. We sat like that for a while, her staring out at the yard, me leaning on the frame of the open doorway. The sun slipped low, coloring the edge of the sky with that deep orange that always made the trees look like they were on fire. It was quiet. Finally, she asked, "Do you still love me?" The question didn't surprise me, but it still caught in my chest. Yes, I said, but love doesn't mean I owe you silence. She nodded, slowly, then stood. I'm not going to fight you in court, she said. I don't have it in me. That's good, I said, because I'd win. That earned the faintest smile from her, just a twitch at the edge. At the door, she turned back. Is there anything left for me in this house? I held her gaze. Respect the boundary, I said. Maybe one day there will be. She nodded, didn't argue, didn't apologize either. When the door closed behind her, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt steady, rooted, the kind of stillness that comes not from winning, but from no longer being at someone else's mercy. Outside, the wind picked up. Dry leaves skittered across the porch. Inside, the house remained mine. And that, finally, was enough. The morning came quiet. No calls, no knocking. No envelopes slipped through the mail slot like threats disguised as paperwork. Just the sound of the kettle, the low creak of the old floorboards, and the soft hum of wind moving through the trees beyond the back porch. It was the first morning in weeks that didn't feel like it belonged to someone else. I took my time with the tea. Real leaves, not the bagged kind. Let it steep the full 5 minutes. Sat at the kitchen table with the cup in both hands, feeling the heat work into my knuckles. The ache was still there. Age doesn't negotiate. But it wasn't sharp. It just reminded me I was still here. I watched the light change in the dining room, the way it always slid across the floor from east to west, touching each of the planks Derek laid down himself back in '72. Some of them creaked now. Some had small cracks, but they held. Everything in this house had held. After breakfast, I opened the windows, let the fresh air in. October was shedding its sweetness. The wind smelled like dirt and dry bark. The garden was mostly bare now, except for the stubborn rosemary and the last of the climbing ivy. I trimmed the ivy back a little. Not much, just enough to keep it from overtaking the edge of the porch. There's a difference between letting something grow and letting it take over. I'd learned that lesson late, but not too late. Inside, I dusted the mantel, rearranged the few things I still kept there. The photo of Derek in uniform, the ceramic owl Haley made in 4th grade, the brass candlesticks I never lit anymore. The walls were bare now, and I liked them that way. They felt honest. I spent the afternoon in the sewing room, not sewing. My fingers didn't move as fast as they used to, but sorting through old linens, deciding what to keep and what to let go. Some had stories stitched into them. Others were just fabric, worn out from being useful. I folded each piece with care, not for nostalgia, for order, a kind of reverence. These weren't relics. They were pieces of a life. Mine. In the late afternoon, I made soup. Simple potato and leek with a heel of bread toasted in the pan. Ate at the small table by the back window. No phone beside me, no news. Just the quiet rhythm of spoon, bowl, breath. I didn't think of Maddie or John. Not much. They'd made their choices. And now, so had I. The paperwork was done, the bank secure, the will final. There would be no more meetings, no more justifying. I didn't need to repeat my reasons to people who'd stopped listening years ago. The silence in the house wasn't empty. It was earned. After dinner, I lit a single candle on the windowsill. Not for anyone else. Just to mark the day. A way of saying, I was here. I lived this. And I kept it mine. Before bed, I pulled the old quilt from the cedar chest. The one with the deep green border and uneven stitching from when I still tried to do everything by hand. Spread it across the bed. Smoothed the corners. Sat down. My body was slower now, but my mind had never been clearer. People talk about aging like it's a slow fade, a drifting away. But that's not the truth of it. Sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes it's like everything sharpens. Your regrets, your instincts, your sense of what can't be taken from you. That night, I slept with the windows open. No locks. No fear. Just the sound of leaves brushing the siding and the weight of my own name, intact, resting on the deed in the drawer beside the bed. It had taken time and silence and not a little pain. But the house was quiet. And for the first time in a long while, so was I. I never thought the end of a war would feel like this. Not a bang, not a line drawn in the sand. Just a long exhale into an empty room that no longer echoes with expectation. It's been 3 weeks since the last knock. No more letters, No more lawyers. No more arguments dressed up like family concern. The silence has settled around me like good wool, weighty, warm, honest. And I've been thinking, maybe this story was never really about them. Not Maddie, not John, not even Elise. Maybe it was about a woman waking up one morning and realizing that she'd spent the better part of her life keeping peace she never truly felt, giving to stay needed, shrinking to stay loved. Maybe I'm writing this now because it needs to be written down somewhere. Not for them, but for me. I want to remember how it happened. Not just the legal filings or the bank transfers or the arguments, but the stillness that came after. The mornings where the light fell in the right way and I didn't feel like a guest in my own life anymore. They said I was being dramatic, vindictive, cruel. What they meant was, you've stopped making yourself small for our comfort. And yes, I suppose I did. I stopped answering calls that only came when the money ran dry. I stopped smiling through dinners that left me feeling hollow. I stopped pretending that silence was the same thing as love. I took back my house, my name, my say. There was no applause, no witnesses, just paper, pen, and a spine I'd forgotten I still had. And now the house feels different. Not louder, but fuller. I planted bulbs along the walkway last week. Daffodils and tulips. They'll come up in the spring, long after the weight of this season is past. Maybe Haley will help me replant the herb garden. Maybe she won't. That's not the point. The point is, I can choose. I can walk through each room and see only what I want to keep. Not guilt, not fear, not the cloying sweetness of children who forgot that love isn't a transaction. Let the doorbell stay quiet. Let the mailbox hold only bills and birthday cards. Let the quiet stretch out as long as it likes. I've earned it. And when I go, someday, not now, I know what I'll leave behind. Not just a house free of dispute, not just legal clarity, but a history that says, she knew where she stood. That matters. That tells a different story than the one they tried to write for me. Haley asked me last week if I ever felt lonely now that things had settled. And I told her the truth. Loneliness is a kind of freedom when you're no longer being consumed by others. I used to think I was strong because I endured. Now I know. Strength is what happens when you stop enduring and start choosing. So if you're reading this, whoever you are, another woman with a quiet house and a heart full of noise, let me leave you with this. It is not cruel to protect what is yours. It is not selfish to draw a line and stand behind it. It is not too late. Not at 60, not at 80, not ever. Reclaim the key. Rewrite the will. Replant the garden. And if you're afraid, let that be the sign that you're finally doing something for yourself. Let them misunderstand. Let them whisper. You are not here to be understood. You are here to belong. To yourself. And if this story meant something to you, share it. Leave a comment. Let someone else know it's possible. Because it is. I promise you, it is.